Welcome back. This is the Clever Content channel. My name is Nigel Hart, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to have a good chat with Verity Tiff.
Yes, I work as a tourist guide. I'm based in Coventry and I offer guided walks and tours in Coventry, Warwickshire and the Heart of England region.
So in that region, what is your favourite area to walk in then?
It's very difficult. It's a very varied region, so it's very difficult to say what my favourite is. It's got lots of things that visitors will go to many times, like Stratford, very big draw for visitors both in the UK and overseas. But then we also have some of the more unusual places like Worcester and the Malvern Hills for walking, which doesn't really create or attract as big a tourist market. We also cover Shropshire, which is much more rural and again, an area that not many people visit. I do, to some extent, whatever it is they want. So I don't have many actual set tours that I offer. I do some in some of places like Stratford or Oxford where I'll have a basic tour, which is usually what people are asking for. For instance, in Stratford, people usually are going to come on a coach, they'll arrive at the leisure centre and they want a tour that covers the main Shakespeare properties, the main part of town, and they may or may not be going to visit Anne Hathaway's cottage or things like that. So I work the route around where they're going to start and where they're going to finish, because sometimes they'll be finishing for lunch or they're going back to the theatre, that sort of thing. In a similar way, Oxford, there's a general tour. Most places I'll meet them near the Ashmolean Museum because that's an easy place for people to be dropped off. And then we'll work our way through the sort of bit of the city that's got the university and colleges that are all mixed up around that city for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And finish, again, depending on exactly where they want to finish or what else they want to do. Other tours, I might be given a particular itinerary. Somebody's either organising a group tour or you've got what we call a destination management company that is acting as an agent and they know what they want. So they'll give me the sort of itinerary they want, or they want suggestions of how best to fit it together. So it varies really.
Yeah, because I was going to say, how do you know where to take people? Is that pre-ordered, or do people phone you up and ask you to sort of take them on a route? Or
usually it's what people have asked for, it's what they know what they want, or they might ask for ideas. The only thing that I tend to offer as something that's public, that's bookable, and I've not been doing many of that this year, is in Coventry, because I'm based in Coventry, to try and get more public tours where individuals can book on. And that was very good coming out of COVID, but it's fallen off a lot now. So I don't offer so many of those.
How did you manage during COVID? Did you not do any tours at all? Or
no, the business disappeared really, as with a lot of businesses, because it's a later career, so it's not a major part of my income. I didn't get any grants and help, but I was okay because I survived anyway. That meant I didn't have big debts to pay afterwards, so actually in some ways it was a blessing. I got no help with the business, but it meant that I didn't have to worry about grants and things that I had to pay back. And because I don't have a premises to look after, I work from home effectively, because I just go wherever people want me. I didn't have much in the way of overheads.
Fantastic, yeah.
But I didn't have any work. I had 1 year when I had virtually no work. I did try and get into doing virtual tours, but I found I was having to learn a lot of new technology and techniques, and I didn't have that big reach in marketing to actually make them really pay their way.
Yeah, I should imagine. I mean, going on a walk myself, it's about the environment so trying to do that virtually would probably be, to deliver the things that you go on a walk to receive, really.
Well, because I found that I was trying to get a virtual tour to very much mimic being there. And then I found I hadn't got the photographs I wanted. I found that a lot of photographs I'd taken of places, I'd taken not to even market myself, I'd taken to learn and to remind myself. And I found that over time, I need different sorts of photographs if I'm trying to put things like on social media to market myself. And certainly if I'm doing a virtual tour, I needed very specific shots. So that's why I concentrated very much on just doing virtual tours. I did a couple for Coventry because I felt I could get out and actually take the photos I wanted. Because I don't like using stock photos, and I'm always very wary of copyright, so I'm very wary about using other people's photos.
So I'd be interested to hear about your journey then. How did you get where you are now? And you say it was a sort of secondary part of your career then.
Yeah, I mean, most of my working life I've been either a teacher or working in education in one way or another. I then effectively retired. I got a couple of part-time jobs, but I had family commitments, so I didn't really work for a couple of years. And then decided I just wanted to be doing something. I realised that when I'd been working at Warwick Business School, I'd really enjoyed showing people around and meeting new students who were thinking of visiting. So I looked into the idea of being a tourist guide. Always been interested in history and culture and things. Wasn't my background. And I was talking to somebody about it, and he said, it would be really good. There is a Heart of England regional course just coming up. He said, you thought I'd be really good and it'd be something I'd enjoy doing. So I largely trained as a guide because I wanted to do the course. I thought it would be really interesting. But then, having paid a lot of money and spent 10 months of my life working really hard, taking 8 exams, thought, maybe I ought to try and earn some money from this and recoup some of it. Not entirely sure whether I ever really have, because that was in 2016.
Yeah.
So I only had a few years to get going before COVID happened.
Okay. That's really interesting. So from a marketing sense, you mentioned that, you go out on social media, you've got a website. Is that how you kind of mainly generate business?
I think I had to, after COVID, I had to really think again about what I did. I hadn't really thought about marketing at all in the first few years. I just let it grow. I did very little work that first season, again, for a variety of reasons. But by the time 2017, because I was a qualified guide, I'm a member of the Institute of Tourist Guiding, which sort of accredits the exams, and also a member of the British Guild of Tourist Guides, where you have to be a qualified guide to be a member. And they're really the sort of the membership marketing arm organisation, in that they have, you can have your own profile on their website, and largely from overseas, the big companies that know they want a qualified guide will look on the Guild's website and find your profile. So initially, that was really where I was beginning to get known with a couple of different companies.
I see. Myself, I've not experienced any of your tours, but I do really understand the benefit from going on a tour. I was very lucky to be in Budapest a few years ago with some friends, and someone signed us on a tour then, and I'd never been on a tour before, and the knowledge that I got of the city was just incredible. I absolutely loved the whole experience, and I think it's now something that if ever I go on a city break, I will consider, because my knowledge suddenly sort of grew about how to get around in the area, how to sort of, what the history is, what the reasons were for everything from the architecture to sort of like the food. It all sort of fed through from the knowledge that I gained from this tour guide. And I suppose I really started to understand how much more you can get from an area through kind of engaging with somebody like you, kind of it shares a bit more information. How do you go about building a knowledge of the area that you're?
I think that was partly what our training was about, because the Heart of England is a huge region. So even within that time and with the exams, you can never know everything about it. I had a lot of places I had to visit. So I think to some extent, it taught me how to put a tour together and the sorts of things you want to know and that people want to ask. I think one of the key things is that we have to do what was called a background knowledge paper, which covers the whole of the UK, lots of different subjects, which really equips me to answer questions, particularly from people who aren't from the UK. So I'd say a big market for a qualified guide is people from outside the UK, because they'll ask all sorts of things about our education, our social services, our legal system, parliament,
Wow.
architecture, history. People from the US, their history is not as old. And, I made a group laugh the other week when I said we were talking about trees. And I said, oh yeah, well, horse chestnut, it's not a native species because it was only introduced by the Romans. I said, admittedly, that was nearly 2,000 years ago. But, so of course they laughed because they thought, to them, that would be really. But then to go back to the question about putting a tour together, it is really just getting to know the place. I like to have visited the places. And so in the early days, if I had a tour of somewhere that I hadn't done a tour before, I always wanted to fit in time to go and visit it, walk around, get maps of it, find out about the interesting buildings, and just a lot of looking up and learning things myself. Making sort of notes. I'm not very good at doing notes, but just putting that together and making it tell a story about the place, really.
Yeah, I think that storytelling is really important, isn't it? So do you plot a route? Do you know where you're going to go in every point?
For me, the route, I think different guys work in a different way. I think just because of the way I learn and visualise things, for me the route has to come first. I have to sort out a route, and then once I've got the route, I'll look at key locations and I'll think about what are the stories that I want to put through and telling that story. I mean, one of the things that I did do, again, because I found that Coventry was quite difficult to get enough people to come to public tours to be worthwhile. Over the winter, I've produced a self-guided audio tour.
Okay.
That people can buy. So it's not quite the same as a real-life guide, but I like to think it's the next best thing.
So is that you talking through the route and explaining the things that you know about the route?
Yeah. It's done through something called Voice Map. And so you have to have a smartphone and earphones of some sort, really, to make it work properly. Yeah, and it will just, it works on GPS, picking up your location. So it triggers all these audio files that I had to record, and there are a few photos that I've taken. So if you're not quite sure, just want to see it in a bit more detail. But most of it, it's me talking. You just put it in your pocket. I'm talking, and I tell you about the stuff and direct you to the next point.
That's fantastic. So is that available through your website? How would somebody get a hold of that?
You can get it either on, there is now a link from my website to it. Also, if you go onto Voice Map itself, it's through there. And Voice Map have also now put it on TripAdvisor and Get Your Guide.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. So is that just in Coventry at the moment?
That's the only one I've done is Coventry. It did take me 4 months to do. But that's partly because I'd never done one before. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist. And it just took a lot of sorting out. And I have started another one. I started one in April, but I've not got very far with it. I've not properly finalised the route because since April I've been really busy doing real life tours. So I know I've already got ideas of the next 2 or 3 that I want to do.
That would be a great thing. I can see people in Malvern coming to Malvern and not necessarily knowing the way around. And if there was a tour that would take them through that, through the area, or alternative tours, then that would be really, really valuable for tourism.
I think it's a medium that really lends itself to the places where it's quite difficult to get individuals randomly being there ready for an in-person tour. With Coventry, I do get the odd group booking because a group is coming or wants something particular. But individuals, I was only tending to get inquiries 1 or 2 at a time, which means it's not very cost effective.
What would be a typical size for a group? Is it just individuals, or is it?
To be honest, it can vary. I don't like groups that are too big for all sorts of reasons. I will do tours for individuals or couples or small families. If you're doing a walking tour where you've got a group going round somewhere like Stratford, Oxford or Coventry, 15 to 20 is an okay number.
Oh, right.
Once you're getting more than 15 to 20, it can be difficult to find places where you can comfortably stop. I mean, these days they do have these things that people call them whisper boxes, where the participants are wearing something so they can hear you. And the guide's got something. They have They have their uses, but I think they can sometimes in themselves create problems that the group can get very spread out.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily know what you're looking at. So even with those, I tend to use them, but still gather the group together and in effectively guide in the old-fashioned way, because I want to know what they're looking at. But they can help if a big group. They don't work if you're having somebody having to translate for you, though. And I have done that before, where if you have a group where you translate, and again, that's a slightly different skill, or I do a tour in a different way. I tend to stop less frequently, but say more when I stop, because it makes it easier for the translator to give a chunk of information together.
Crikey. Yeah, that's a lot to sort of manage in one go.
Yeah.
So I should imagine when you've got a big group like that, you want to get them as close as you can together, so that when you're just talking about a particular thing, then everybody can see what you're talking about.
It's also that you have to be aware of other people around you. You don't want either your group to be in the road getting risk running over. You don't want to force all the other people to get in the road or have to go round you, people with pushchairs, people in wheelchairs, or just general members of the public. You also don't want your group stood there, so you've got people walking between you and the group. And I think since COVID, I mentioned before, it's been quite difficult sometimes to get groups to get close together again.
Yeah. So have you got to take in, when you plan a tour, have you got to consider all the health and safety elements of it, or do you have to do any paperwork on that, or is it just common sense?
I would say it's largely common sense, but as part of our course and the qualification, we had to do what was called a tour planning project. That was one of the exams. And one of the things that we had to identify was we had to do a walking tour and a coach tour and a site visit. We had to highlight health and safety issues. We had to, for the walking tour and the site tour, mark on some sort of plan where we would stand with the group to make sure it was safe. And we also did practical exams where for a city and a couple of sites. And again, things like health and safety. It would have been, if we were, during the exam, a member of public had been forced to walk in the road round our group, it would be an instant fail.
Right, okay. Yeah.
So very much part of what we're expected to understand about.
Yeah, it would seem that accreditation and that the whole process of understanding how to do it properly was invaluable, really. It's very easy for somebody to say, I'm a tour guide and wander around with a group of people, but if they're not considering all of those other things, then obviously it adds risk to the whole process.
Yeah, I mean, in this country, it's not a regulated profession in any way. You're right, anybody can say they're a tour leader, a tour guide. There are grey areas between what's a tour guide, a tour leader, a tour manager, tourist guide, all sorts of terms that become interchangeable, but there are subtle differences between them.
What are the differences?
I think the two biggest things are what we call a tour or tourist guide and a tour manager. A tour or tourist guide is expected to have a fairly good knowledge of a local area or region and will give a fairly in-depth tour. A tour manager is usually somebody who's working for a multi-day tour with the group, and that may be sometimes called a group leader. So you're organising the visit and liaising with people. And you end up inevitably doing a bit of guiding along the way, because if you happen to know about somebody, you're not going to say, I'm not allowed to tell you. Or I've come outside my region. So like if I've with a group that are going slightly outside the boundaries of my region, I will guide up to a point. But because, let's say, Bath, which people might visit from our region, I'm not really meant to properly guide in Bath because I'm not qualified for Bath. So I might suggest that if they want an in-depth, proper guided tour, we get a local guide who works with me. Yeah,
you could give them the overview, but then if they want specifics...
So that would be a tour manager expected. As we come into Bath, I'd give them a bit of background, the sorts of things they might want to see. I might help the coach driver work out where they can park and pick up and things like that. But I wouldn't necessarily do a walking tour, although it's not illegal. My issue is now that because I'm now an accredited qualified guide, the institute that I'm a member of won't expect me to do that. So in some ways I'm slightly less able to do it than somebody who's not qualified. because otherwise you'd be getting a bit hypocritical,
Yeah.
trying to regard what I regard as where I'm qualified, but then going outside. So it becomes it's a very grey area in the UK.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Have you ever lost anybody?
Have I ever lost anybody? No, I've not really lost anybody. I've sometimes had people say that they've left the tour because they want to do something else. Or I know that people are going to dip out.
Yeah.
Occasionally, if I've been part of a group, people, there's usually what's happened if there have been two of us with a group more in countryside walking or somewhere, and the group has got split, so one half of the group aren't quite where the other half are, but we usually manage to communicate and work out where we are. But yes, that happens more. That is more likely to happen actually with these like things like whisper voice.
Yes.
To whatever they call them, because actually it gives people a false sense of security. Oh, I can still hear her.
Yes. You're still connected to the group even if you're not actually close to them.
And so that's one of the reasons why I'm not that keen on using them unless I really have to.
Yeah, it would seem there's, looking back at your past and you said you were in education, there seems to be like a parallel between looking after children and taking them around places and then obviously ushering adults and families around at the same time.
Yeah, I think they are what they call transferable skills, isn't it? It's a bit like a school visit or trip out, but also you are giving people information. I mean, they will say that although I'm not really, there is an element of education in what I'm doing. It's meant to be entertaining, but then if you're teaching teenagers, which most of my teaching you've got to be reasonably entertaining to engage them, even though you're trying to educate them as well.
Yes, that's that whole thing, isn't it? How to teach is quite a technical, conversation in its own right, really. How to sort of educate people without lecturing them, I suppose.
Yeah.
Is there a typical length for a tour? Do you aim for a distance?
If it's a city town walking tour, I would say 90 minutes to 2 hours is what you're aiming for. Longer than that, people find too tiring. They want a break. They want to sit down. They want to go and get a coffee or something like that. So that's really the length I'd aim for. The actual distance you cover, it depends where you are.
Yeah.
It's only going to be a couple of miles usually on a city or town tour like that. If it's a countryside walk, again, it depends on the time you've got available, how good they are at walking, what their interests are. So, yeah, that can vary greatly.
Yeah, okay. But you must cover quite a distance in an average week then, I would imagine.
Sometimes it depends how much what sorts of tours I'm doing. If I've only got a couple of town tours, you're not covering a huge distance, really, because it's quite slow walking. But I probably do walk more than the average person.
You get your steps in.
Yeah, but then if I'm at home all day doing admin, I don't. So it varies. Yeah, certainly if I'm with a group where we're out walking every day, yes, I'm on my feet quite a lot.
So do you get any repeat customers, or is it just generally?
It's nice to get repeat customers. I do get some repeat customers. It's a very fluid market, so it changes, and I think especially if I'm trying to offer tours in places like Coventry that aren't necessarily on everybody's main route through. So that tends to be one-offs mostly because you don't get that many repeat ones, not in my experience. Stratford, I have some repeat customers. I've got an American university that do twice a year. I do a tour for them because they have a sort of in England semester, and they come to visit Stratford on a day visit. So I do one of those every 6 months. That's been quite nice. I like doing that sort of repeat business because I know what they want. I know the sorts of things they're interested in. So I can adapt what I do to fit what they want.
Obviously, we do marketing. Is there anything that you would like to know about what we can do for you?
It's something I said. When I first qualified, I didn't really give it any thought. I had no business background and I was getting enough business through the British Guild. I went to some travel trade shows. So I was in person just talking people, to some extent just learning to be a little bit more assertive and just say, I'm a guide, have you got any work I could do? Can I help you with any of your tours? So I picked up a couple of contacts through that. And it was just going very nicely until 2019 when, unfortunately, just before COVID, I was ill, but then COVID came. And so I thought, right, I've got to learn to run a business. So I did do a couple of marketing courses, digital marketing, because I thought I need to find out about this, at least understand some of the terms. But I thought I need to create more of a presence on social media. I didn't grow up with social media. It doesn't come naturally to me at all. And so I actually find the whole thing quite difficult. And I'm still not entirely sure where I get some of my business from and what's the most effective, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I'm having to think very carefully about not spending too much money for the amount of work that realistically I really want to do.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be working every day, even through the summer season. I don't think I'm capable of doing it every day. I get far too tired. And if I'm not careful, there's a limit to how much I can actually charge for a day's work. I end up spending more on joining organisations, marketing, than I'm actually making if I'm not careful. So it's more having those skills and working out what's cost effective is my biggest issue, really.
Yeah. I mean, that's very interesting, and you're right to sort of be focusing on the benefits of the activity. It's interesting that you say you don't know where some of the business comes from. In many ways, that's quite exciting, but it'd be good to sort of try and work out where that came from, I suppose, from a marketing sense.
Well, I ask people and they just say they found me on the internet.
Perfect. Well, that's a good.
I mean, I've got an unusual name, which helps.
Yep.
When I set out as trading, I decided I like alliteration. I thought I'd make use of my name. So I just set out, especially as far as like for tax purposes, Ventures with Verity. Then I found I had to explain what that meant. So now on my website, it now says Adventures with Verity. And I've got an email address that is tours@Ventures with Verity.
Yeah.
Because that helped, and that came after COVID, when I was really looking at how I'm really getting people to find me. I mean, some tourist guides I know don't have a website. They rely purely on their profile on the British Guild's website.
Oh, right. Oh, that's interesting.
And they seem to do quite well with that.
Yeah.
I do have a website which does make a cost. I've spent a fair bit of money recently getting it redesigned or rejigged. I don't know really how much I get from the website, but I think I have found that people have sometimes said they've looked at my website after they've looked at other things. So I think it maybe helps people understand a bit more about what I do.
Yeah, that's usually the thing, isn't it? A lot of websites that aren't e-commerce, or they're not, creating a product at the end of it, the process that most people go through is, if they come into contact you, whether through word of mouth or they find you on something else, is to just double check, isn't it?
Yeah.
Find out whether you're legitimate or, what you offer is what they're looking for. And so from that point of view, the website is invaluable.
Yeah, I use it more. I think that, just so another way of people finding out about me.
Yeah.
I've also got profiles on, say, the British Guild, the Institute. We have a profile. I'm also a member of our local association, which fairly recently we've been able to put our own profile on there. So that's the Heart of England Tourist Guides Association. I think realistically it probably doesn't get a lot of traffic, but I'm there. I was a member of the association anyway. Now that I'm an Oxford City Guide, because I get a lot of work, I was always getting a lot of inquiries about Oxford, and it is in our region, but I felt I needed to know it better. I'm a member of the Oxford Guild, and I've got a profile there. So I think mostly probably a lot of my work tends to come from those. I do have worked on LinkedIn as a social media because I'm more comfortable with LinkedIn than anything else.
Yeah.
I am aware that I probably should get better at Facebook and Instagram because I think people do use those.
Yeah, I think, LinkedIn in many ways is going to be a way of you reaching out to the kind of more commercial people that you engage with, who are booking tours on a regular basis. So that would seem like an obvious place to sort of talk about what you do. And but then you're right, maybe the Facebooks and the Twitters and the that kind of social media is more suited for you, taking pictures of where you are, kind of showing the story that way, and people sort of engaging in that kind of content. It's time consuming, really, ultimately, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're one person running a business, and you've got to do everything. So spending time doing the tours, running the business, doing all the marketing, it's a difficult thing to sort of manage, I should imagine.
I think it's just when I do public tours, I did get a load of flyers that I've distributed around Coventry. I've got flyers for my self-guided tour. How much business I ever got in terms of people booking on my public tours through seeing a flyer, I think was very minimal, to be honest. I think these days the digital presence is actually much more important. And so I think probably that's where money ought to be spent rather than worrying too much about paper stuff. Although people do still want odd flyers and things for things sometimes.
Of course, yeah. Well, it's good in many ways that the paper still gets used as a kind of traditional kind of output of marketing. Do you ever ask for testimonials and feedback?
I try to. Again, because of what I do is a little bit scattered, it's been difficult to work out what to do with it. In the early days, I was just terrible at asking people, even for a testimonial, just because I didn't like to ask. and then in terms of getting reviews, I do have a Google profile that has reviews on. I've started to try and get a bit better about getting people to put reviews on, but it doesn't always work. Sometimes people say they will. Even now that I've got one of these little cards that they can get to my Google review quickly, that doesn't always work very well or instantly. I think the technology sometimes doesn't work for them. I think partly because quite a lot of the tours I do tend to be people of a slightly older generation that aren't quite as used to doing things like that. So it doesn't always work very well.
Yeah, because you have to have a Google account to do that, don't you?
Yeah, and a lot of people have got a Google account actually. And I think these days probably most searches are done through Google for tours. When people are out and about visiting, I think in reality Google is where people look. I think these days even more than TripAdvisor.
Oh, okay.
Because I think people instantly Google.
Yeah, and if TripAdvisor comes up in the list, then
they'll look at it.
Yeah.
So for TripAdvisor, I do have a profile just for my tours in Coventry. I found TripAdvisor difficult to work with unless I want to sell actual products through them. And I found it difficult to set up a TripAdvisor profile that would encourage people to give reviews of other things. It gets a bit messy. So I'm trying to get more reviews on Google for things that aren't just Coventry. So I've recently had a couple for Oxford, just to remind people I do other places. Because I think for me, again, if I try and spread myself on too many different platforms, I just never get there.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to focus on Google reviews because I think I can manage that. I know how to ask people for them. Most people have got a Google account of some sort or other. And at least if I work on that, it's there.
That's it, yeah. It's been about, it's all about marketing. It's about being decisive and going, okay, I'm going to focus on this. Choiceful, I think, is the word that we use. Make a choice to do something and then do that very well. That's really interesting. You mentioned Coventry quite a few times. Obviously, our connection came through Coventry.
Yeah.
Is there a need to sort of like do more work in Coventry? You said it was quite difficult to sort of engage with people in Coventry.
I think people who live in Coventry want very, very detailed knowledge of, well, not always actually. I've had quite a lot of people come on my tours and enjoy it. We've got in Coventry now quite a lot of people who are either unqualified and doing it as a business, or I would say more historians interested in local history who've now started offering tours. So there's a lot of direct competition for local people to do these tours. And they've got a big presence on Facebook groups. And in reality, I'm just never going to compete with that. I don't have that. I do have the in-depth knowledge, but I don't have that time to be constantly engaged on those Facebook groups. I'm doing other things. So I don't think I pick up much local business. and it's limited business coming outside of Coventry. I think Destination Coventry, that was set up on the back of the Chamber of Commerce, is trying to market Coventry, but whether it actually markets much in the way of groups who want a walking tour is debatable, really.
Yeah. Because I'd imagine if you think about Stratford-upon-Avon, everybody knows about Stratford-upon-Avon, and it is a tourism hotspot, isn't it? Really, people go there, and this is no disrespect to Coventry. It's a different kind of draw, isn't it? Really, and people who are going to Coventry are looking for obviously a lot more about the history of it rather than just the experience and the things that you do.
I think often people have come to Coventry for a particular reason. Maybe they're coming for a concert. There is now, we've got St Mary's Guildhall that's opened up, big tourist attraction. People are coming specifically at that. They're doing a very good job of marketing it and running it and doing things. So, I think it's just probably in some ways a little bit like Morven. People come for particular things, but it's not really got that actually very big footfall you need. I mean, it can become difficult to manage for places that have a heavy footfall. Stratford and Oxford both in some ways struggle with tourism, but they need the tourism. But it's just a difficult one, really. I think unless you get that really big footfall through a place to just focus on doing tours there, you're never going to get a huge business. I want to do it, I enjoy doing it, and as I get older, it'll become more manageable, not having to travel so far. And I don't want to close the door to doing it, but really I'm getting better paid work doing other things.
Gotcha, yeah. So where's the future then? What do you see yourself doing in years to come?
Possibly slowing down. I don't know. I would like it to be able to be something that I can do as I get older and just carry. I don't have to do as much preparation work because I know some of the tours, so it's easier to pick up tours. The future for me, I think, is in my downtime when I'm not out and about, is working on self-guided tours of the areas that I know well, because it was a challenge doing it. I was very wary about doing it. Found it quite difficult to write because I would say I'm better at talking than writing. But I did do it. I was very pleased with what I did. It's not been very easy to sell, again, because it's not a big tourist destination. But now I know what I'm doing, I'd like to write some more. So I think moving forward, and I think on the back of that, if people see that, think, it's another way of marketing myself, actually.
Yes.
Because people see you and find you. And the more of those I've got, the easier it is to say, well, you like that one, why don't you do that one?
Yes, yeah. We've been doing a lot in the world of YouTube, and no doubt this will go out on our YouTube channel. And it is very much about joining those things together, joining your marketing elements together. With every episode that we produce, we always talk about other episodes that are available. So maybe there's a potential there, sort of, when you're creating one, talking about other ones that people could, listen to and engage with. So that's good.
But it's doing the work to get those together.
Yeah, it's this prep
and
work,
for me,
it
it was a long piece of work. This one will definitely take me several months to do, and I thought I might get it done a bit earlier in the summer, but things happened, and so it didn't get done. But it's there, and it will be waiting for me when we get to a quiet time, if that ever happens.
So is it seasonal then? Is it you?
Very seasonal. I mean, some guides do work during the winter. There are some places, London guides tend to get a lot of work during the winter, not perhaps as much as during summer, but we'll get quite a lot because most international visitors, because of the way our airport system is set up, most international visitors are flying into Heathrow or Gatwick. So they're flying into central London, they stay in London, and then they're visiting out from London. So either they're looking for a day tour that can come out of London, or they're skipping over our region on their way to somewhere else. Right. So I pick up things like Stratford because they're en route from London, let's say to North Wales or to the Lake District. Don't get as many based in the region, but again, I think the regional setup with the creation of the West Midlands, not just the county as such now, but we had the mayor, and now the Coventry and Warwickshire Chamber of Commerce trying to work with some of the wider chambers of commerce around the West Midlands and Destination Coventry, working with Shakespeare's England, selling it very much, come out of London, we've got good transport links, because that's what would actually get me more business with doing things. But that's why I'm going to concentrate my self-guided tours on the region within easy reach of Coventry. So my next one I'm working on is Warwick. I'd like to do another one of Coventry, but there's a lot of redevelopment going on, so I want to wait until I know exactly where you can get to. But things like Kenilworth, Leamington, are moving out, just gradually spreading out, with places where people might go, and even places like Bourton-on-the-Water, where you get a lot of visitors, but you probably don't get that much they're together at the right time for a guided tour. So places that people might be visiting and might think, it'd be quite nice to have a little tour around.
Yes, fantastic. That's exciting.
So, but that's several years' work, really.
Yes, lots to do on that list.
So if you're coming either as an individual or as a family group, or you're bringing a group into the Heart of England region, and especially if you're in the bit that's generally termed the West Midlands, and you're interested in taking a tour, please do contact me, because then I can help discuss what you would like to do, whether you want a town walking tour, whether you're interested in taking in some of the countryside around Coventry and Warwickshire, or whether you want a coach tour that's touring through the wider region. You can find my contact details on my website and also on LinkedIn.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you, Verity. I have one more question before you go. So, do you have a favourite walk?
Do I have a favourite walk? I'm always asked that, and I think that's an incredibly difficult question to answer. Personally, I really like the seaside, and unfortunately that's the one thing our region doesn't have. So I do like walking anywhere that's going to go near water, and we have some great canals in our region, and because of my background in science, the industrial history and the water, anywhere that's going around our canals I can enjoy.
Fantastic, that's wonderful. No, I have a walk that I do, and there's a particular corner in that walk that I always, for some reason, I get to it, and I don't know, I get spine tingles when I get there. I don't know what it is, but there's just a certain part of that walk that I really kind of connect with. So I was interested in that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time today, Verity. That's been really wonderful to chat to you, and I hope everything goes to plan, and good luck with the future.
Well, thank you very much. It's been very nice to talk to you. I've enjoyed it very much.
Great. Thank you.